I want to take a moment to talk about some basic rules we're going to be doing for grading our joint system for our proxy rig. To start off with, the most important one is our position of our joints. Joints should be centered as much as possible inside our character. But I'm also looking to see if are you putting your joints in a straight line? Are they following the anatomy of the character? Also, are they lined up on the edge loops of where our joints are actually, where they should be bending? The next thing I'm looking at is, are your joints have clean values on them? And what does that mean? Is that when I select any root joint, there should be, actually if I select any joint, you should have no rotation values, and your scales should only have one. Now, your translates can have values on them. They're going to have values. Our root joints can have translates in X, Y, and Z, but our children joint should only have a value in X. You might sometimes see a -0 value pop in a Y and Z, and then you could just select it and zero it out right off the bat to get rid of that. wouldn't grade harshly on that because they sometimes do pop up. But all the other children you notice here have only translate X values, and that means it's pointing down the X axis. And that's a very important thing for all their joints. They are pointing down X axis, and they don't have any cluttered Y and Z value on. But root, okay, multiple values. Then our orientations all need to be matching up with one another. And you can see how if we click on our component mode and then click on our question mark, it actually shows us orientation for our joints. You can see how they're all Z's facing forward. That's right. That's correct. They should all do that because this will allow us to shift select multiple joints. Like this. And so that the back will curve and move properly. So that's another major category. So they're pointing down the x-axis, as you can see if I go into my move mode. And it's very important that your move mode is actually in object mode and not in world, because if it's in world, it will not give you the correct axis. Okay. And then finally, the last thing is that your systems all need to have a proper naming convention. So here are some examples. This is how we have our naming. We have our side, which will be like center, left, or right. What orientation is it on the character? The name of the system, is it a back? Is it a neck? Is it a pinky finger or an arm? That's very important to have on there. Then the count in the system. I'm not going to name our joints like shoulder, elbow, and wrist. I'm actually going to put a numbering on them. As you can see, like our arm, which could very easily be shoulder, like elbow, and wrist, is actually going to be 1, 2, and 3 because this is our first joint or joint system. What this allows me to do is that if I see a 01, I know it's a root joint. It's the beginning of our joint system. So, and the end is obviously 1, 2, 3. Then finally, the last part is our suffix here. What type of joint system is it? Is it a binding joint? Is it going to be bound to our geometry? Is it a waist joint? Is it just an end joint that's literally just there for a placeholder? And you also see sometimes pivot, and that's a joint that's not a binding joint, but not a waist. It's just there for support for another system, and that's pretty rare on it. We only have that. Actually, I only have that named once in my system, but mainly binding and waist are going to be the two important ones. Now these, if you make a little mistake on these, it's fine. I'm definitely looking for consistency. If you'll notice that my names, I have thumb and then an uppercase letter in the next word. So if I wanted to put index and finger so I can identify those outside of it, the first word of the next one would be capital. But you notice my first letter on each one of my words is always lowercase. That's what's called camel case. So I'm normally very picky with this because I can grab all the neck system, all the head system, all the systems on the left, and all the systems on the right very easily. So more case what I'm looking for is consistency here. I don't want to see like LT for left and then left, the word left on it. I want to see them all with the same naming system on it. And those are our main rules when I'm looking for grading. Those categories, position, clean values, orientation, and naming, are literally, that's our joint system for our grading on it. So if your values aren't clean, that's where I'm going to hit you on. So this is a beginning. I'm just showing these joints because we're going to go into drawing these joints next. But I wanted to talk about some fundamental rules on what I'm looking for in our system. And this is a podcast you can always look back at and watch through and to make sure, okay, yeah, I'm hitting all these major points.